Hey everybody, welcome back. Thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're going to be getting into a little bit more Arcane, talking about the show, talking about some of the things that I think kept you watching. What made the show interesting for you? What made it interesting for me? A few of the story ideas and characters that, as the show went on, you know, some of the ideas and concepts that kept us involved. We talk a lot about what made a show good, why people liked watching it. You can go look for things and they're going to tell you, oh, the animation was great. Just the general plot was great or whatever. But there's always some underlying things in a show like this that keep people watching that they don't even really know is there or hasn't been addressed yet. So in this video, we're going to be talking about three main ideas that I have for what kept you watching and what kept you interested, why you enjoyed the show so much. So first, we're going to be talking just a little bit, just briefly, on the idea of characters who contrast each other. So for example, you've got Vander and Silco, and we don't get a ton of on-screen time with these two, but we get enough. We get enough to understand their relationship and that at one point they were friends and they were working towards a goal, and that was isolating what's known in this world as the Lanes as part of Piltover, the city, isolating it from what they call Topside, the rich part of Piltover, and making it its own nation, the nation of Zaun. And that was their goal throughout their friendship and what they were trying to do. Of course, we know that their relationship does, eventually degrades and they become enemies and start fighting. But it's one of those things that, we understand in media of two characters. Usually you have brains and you have brawn. Silco's obviously the brains, Vander's the brawn. The story kind of flips that idea on its head when it comes to a lot of the characters, because you'll have strong characters who are intelligent, or you'll have your brainy type characters who are incredibly dangerous. The show does a really good job of keeping you on your toes, never knowing who's who sometimes. Another contrast that we have is Vi and Powder. You got, again, intellect and physical strength. Vi is, she's the boxer, she's the leader, she spearheads the adventures and the going out and doing stuff and getting things. And Powder's, at least when she's young, before she becomes Jinx, she's the brainy inventor. None of her stuff ever works, and that's a good contrast. Again, it's that, what we're familiar with, big guy, little guy trope is what it's called. When you have two characters that contrast each other, whether it be in their mental capabilities, smart versus dumb, or, kind of nice versus kind of a jerk, but they're always together, fat, skinny, big, small. It's something that we're familiar with, that the show turns on its head a little bit. Another example, I don't have any pictures here, but is Mel Medarda and her mother. And Medarda are another representation of that. Of Mel is very smart, and she's small and slender, and her mother is just this big, strong warrior type. But that's sort of the contrast. Contrast keeps us interested in the characters when you know that they're not all going to be the same. And that leads us into our next idea, which is reflection. So we have characters that are more or less reflections of each other. And the show actually shows us this with the city. You have Piltover as a city. You have one side of the bridge is Topside. That's rich people, all the council and everything. And then you have the Lanes, and that's where you've got all the crime, all the stuff going on down there. So from that idea of Topside versus the Lanes, you have character reflections. So first of all, you've got Jace, who is smart. He's an inventor. He has very clear ideas and goals for what he wants and what he wants to accomplish with his ingenuity and with his brain and with his mind. And then his his reflection on the Lane's side is Jinx. Jinx is also an inventor. She's intelligent. She's always making stuff. And you could see how these two characters, if you were to flip their circumstances, you put Jinx on the top side of things, and you put Jace in the Lanes, that you could get a very similar outcome of what their lives end up being, since they're both inventors. Jace wants to make his stuff for progress, for making a better world, and Jinx wants to make her stuff for violence and explosions and all the things that make her happy. And you could see how if that were flipped, you would get a similar result, perhaps, just given environment. The next example is Mel Medarda. She's very political. She's intelligent. She sort of understands those things about court, about the people that, the subterfuge and all of the political machinations and everything. And she's very much into that. That's her thing. Her mother's very much about war, and she likes to find more diplomatic solutions. And her opposite, her reflection, I would consider to be Silco. He's very similar, politically minded, but with different drives and different motives. Prefers to find a less violent solution, but has sort of come to the conclusion that violence is often the answer, but it's never him. He's never the one doing the violent actions. And you see that with a lot of characters who are politically involved, but not necessarily the muscle of the operations. Another reflection, and this is just a short observation, is Heimerdinger, the scientist on the council, a genius, but his reflection on the Lane's side isn't a genius, and that is Vander. As you can see, both of them, the reason I chose these two to reflect each other is because they both have incredible facial hair. And they both make decisions to protect and to keep the status quo, but sacrificing something that could be progressive. So Heimerdinger, he's pushing back against the idea of magic being involved in science, and he does this at the cost of, potentially a better future for everybody, because his species lives hundreds of years, and he just wants to maintain the status quo, people that are safe, people that are happy, and not potentially make things worse by adding something that could be volatile into that environment. Vander does the same thing when it comes to the Lanes. He's the one who wants to protect it. He's the one who wants to maintain the status quo. If they all try to gang up against Topside and do another rebellion, it's just going to keep the people that have found a measure of safety and a measure of hope. It's going to destroy that for them. What could be progress, he would prefer to avoid that and just maintain the safety of the people who are here. And finally, just briefly, again, between Topside and the Lanes, you have the council up in Topside of Piltover, just the people gathered for making decisions and all the stuff that the city needs. But these are also political people, and they're individuals as well, so they each have like vices and things that they use their power for to keep themselves happy and to manipulate others. The flip side of that is the Chem Barons. In the Lanes, you have this sort of pseudo-council of powerful people who have come together since even before Silco's time, even in Vander's time, of people who are protecting their own interests, using the industry to make money for themselves. It's sort of like this one's kind of like a crude reflection of what the council has going on. The third idea that I want to talk about is resolution. For characters to be interesting and for you to be able to feel invested, characters have to have resolve. By the end of the third episode, most of our main characters, they make a decision or they find a resolve that will carry them through the rest of the season. And this is really important for overall character arcs. So for example, you have Jinx or Powder at the time makes a decision to go to the factory and release her bomb, and it has bad repercussions. So based on that decision, she loses some of her family, all of her family, and she ends up with Silco, becoming the person that she'll be through the rest of the series. Then comes challenge, where your idea based on your resolve is challenged in some way. Silco as well made a decision to kidnap Vander, which had repercussions of its own with, his kids coming to try to save him. But the biggest decision he made in that third episode was adopting Jinx. This is challenged later when she starts doing crazy, weird stuff that, he doesn't support, and she starts killing people. And so that idea is challenged by Jace when he says, I can give you the nation of Zaun, but you're going to have to give me Jinx. And then ultimately, by the end of the show, your characters will make another resolve. And this isn't always the case in movies and TV shows, but it is the case in this one. And I feel like it's part of what makes it good is by the end, they make a new decision. They decide something that's going to be pivotal moving forward. So his decision that he made based on the challenge was not to give Jinx up. He says, I would have never given you to them. For his character, he dies and his resolve ends there. But every character has one of those moments where they have to make a new decision for what they're going to do moving forward. As characters move through stories, they have to have the appropriate story beats. So if you're familiar with Brandon Sanderson, who wrote the Stormlight Archive, The Way of Kings, Mistborn series, he said an important part of character development is to have promise, progress, and then payoff. And the show does that so well. I'd say the first 3 episodes give us promise, especially the end of the 3rd episode, big promise for what the rest of the show is going to be. And then all the way to the end, we get progress. Progress, progress, progress. And then finally, it ends with payoff. Characters deciding to, in Jinx's case, blow up the council. Silco deciding not to give her up. Just things that make the show feel resolved while we know that there's more to come, if you know what I'm saying. Those 3 ideas of contrasting characters, reflection of characters, and the resolve of characters were so consistent in this show. They took the idea of subtext of the characters and how they're written and the way that you almost have 2 sides of the same coin. And they kept that idea rolling throughout the show. And it made every decision the characters made feel impactful. And that's why I feel it was such an enjoyable show for me. And I hope that's why you guys feel it was an enjoyable show for you. Let me know what your ideas are about story beats and, character arcs and contrasts and stories. Just leave a comment and a like. If you guys want to support us, think about checking out our Patreon, and we'll see you next time.